Hello and welcome to Fun with Failure's TIFU. I'm just being lazy today. I don't feel like preparing. So I've got several stories. I don't know if it's 4 or 5. Let me see here. What does it say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 stories. So, I got 5 stories for you of people making mistakes that cause them lots of problems. Hope you enjoy. Without further ado, let's get started. A few weeks ago, I flew out to Fresno to visit my younger sister and her family, since I haven't seen them in 4 years. The first night in town was wonderful and wholesome. They gave me a quick tour of the local sites, and we ended up going to a local restaurant for our family dinner. The conversation was mostly about family stuff and how the boys were doing in school. The older boy, Alec, was enjoying, thus far, his senior year at high school and enjoyed a healthy social life, and he dated often. On the other hand, my nephew Dan, who does very well academically, but has zero game with the ladies, and when I pressed him as to why, he admitted that he had a hard time approaching them, and mostly stuttered and blushed. Only learned this because Alec chimed in. Being the cool uncle, I let the matter drop, until my sister excused herself to use the ladies' room. As she walked away, I leaned over and offered a bit of advice from my Marine Corps days. If you like big, you needed to go to a place where big is not judged, but don't go empty-handed. I suggested finding a clothing store that accommodates plus sizes, and also bring some snacks for an icebreaker. Now that I think about it, I was about 4 cocktails into this evening, and the snickering coming from my brother-in-law and nephew should have been an omen of sorts. So, the topic was dropped after my sister returned, and that was pretty much my first evening. A few days later, it occurred to all of us that Dan was leaving the house early, and he was returning much later at night, and he was in an uncommonly good mood. When his mother inquired, he explained that he was gaming with his friends and so on. I, however, was not buying it. I pulled him aside and got the truth. The boy explained that after some trial and error, there was a strip mall in town, and both a chicken shack as well as a reputable plus-size women's clothing store. He would buy a bucket of chicken tenders and eat on the hood of his car, chatting up the women as they walked by. He met a girl, and they've been seeing each other. I was happy I could help, and I couldn't believe it worked. However, things went south. A few days after my returning to the East Coast, I received a very emotional call from my sister. She explained between curses and sobs that she had went clothing shopping one day, and when she went to enter the store, there was a "Have you seen this man?" flyer on the door. It was a grainy surveillance photo of Dan sitting on the hood of his car with a bucket of chicken and a 2-liter of soda. The flyer warned of a man approaching women as they tried to shop, and though that he had been warned off, still thought he was a threat. When she confronted the boy, he rolled on me, and his father played ignorant. Now Dan was grounded until the threat of restraining orders died down, and I was told that I am not invited to Christmas. Poor Dan can't go out to see his new girlfriend, and he blames me for that as well. I was at a technology conference today. I like to broadcast random Wi-Fi hotspot names to mess with people, and after the recent story about Planet Fitness, I thought it would go over well as a joke. I mean, who hasn't seen FBI surveillance van as a network? I decided to do it, but put bomb detonator instead, and holy crap, do not do this. The cops got called. I got to spend about 45 minutes chatting with them. They asked me a lot of questions. They had to make sure that I was not a threat. I cooperated fully. I have no doubt being a white guy at a nerd gathering probably helped. I was told I wasn't being charged. I was, however, told to leave the venue and not come back. Flash forward 2 hours. I go to log into my work email on my phone. Password failed. Again. Okay, let's not fat finger this and lock my account. I pull out my laptop, remote into my work PC, go to log in. Your account has been disabled. Contact your service administrator. 20 minutes later, I get the text message. You are being placed on paid administrative leave effective today, while the agency investigates today's events surrounding your being removed from the venue. You are not to complete any work, access agency networks, or report to the office during your leave. We will contact you when the investigation is complete. Yay! So, my dad had this didgeridoo in his house since he visited his sister in Australia 10 years ago. My parents wanted to go out for a walk, but I decided I've eaten too much cheese and I couldn't go with them. Well, while they were out, the internet went down, so I was sort of wandering around, looking for something to do, when I spotted the didgeridoo. I thought to myself, in all these years, I've never actually tried to play it. It's more of a decoration, and I barely take it in when I see it. So maybe it's time. I pick it up and put it to my lips. It felt like I knew what I was doing, and that it was like playing a trumpet. I wanted to play a long, loud note. I take a sharp inhale, and immediately I feel something in the back of my throat. I sputtered hard, and a small white globular thing comes flying out. It hits the floor. At first, I thought it was saliva, and I ignored it. And then I got a weird sensation in the back of my throat. It felt like tingling, but it started to grow more into a tickle, spreading from my cheeks to my gums. I glanced down. I see that white stuff on the floor, seeing several baby spiders crawling out of it in all directions. The second I realized what happened, I feel something tickling the top of my lip. I slap my mouth with my hand. I have squished a spider on my lip. And instantly I go into panic mode. I run into the bathroom and I spit repeatedly into the sink, only to see crushed spider bodies and some severed legs, some of which are still trying to drag themselves away from the plug hole. I retch several times, and then frantically rinse my mouth out with water. I don't think my mouth will ever feel normal again. This happened about a year ago when I was 13. It was a normal weekend, about a month and a half away from school ending. Exciting, so I thought. I ended up going to the skate park with my buddy, and his father pretty much said that riding bikes in the skate park is for wussies. So regrettably, I asked my friend to teach me how to use the skateboard. First, I was sort of riding around on the flat concrete. No problems there, just getting the hang of it and getting my balance. Then after the basic rundown, my friend tries to teach me how he learned to skate. Before we continue, I would just like to state that I was making a joke on the way there about breaking my leg, and that I'll break my leg before I break your skateboard. Anyways, he goes on to say that he learned how to skateboard by using the large ramp in the half tube. He said that he fell a lot, but he eventually got the hang of it. My first attempt is where all was lost in the first half a second. I go down this incredibly small ramp. I'm talking a ramp about 2 foot tall, and the actual ramp itself was about 2 foot long. He tells me to lean forward. I attempt to. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground, and I roll over to see my foot at a 90-degree angle. And about 2 seconds later, I feel like I was shot. Looking back on it, I wish I was. Anyone who has completely snapped both bones, fibula and tibula, will know what pain I'm talking about. Here's how I broke it. Imagine a person on your knees facing forward. Now, imagine falling into that position. Now let's do some math here. And add a skateboard between your upper leg near your butt. And add the force of 200 pounds into the equation. Yeah, I was a biggin. This essentially put a narrow wedge between two bones, with a lot of force behind it. Not to mention, I was wearing these steel-toed military-themed boots. After realizing what happened, the first thing I come to realize is that I'm gonna be on crutches for the next couple of months. So, here I am, mad and nearly in tears because of the frustration and pain. After about a minute, my friend's stepmother calls my dad and asked if they should call the ambulance. I just remember responding with, "Call the freaking ambulance right now!" So, my dad was in town somewhat near the park. He races through lights. He goes up to twice the speed limit, finally arriving well before the ambulance, obviously, and we're just talking, trying to take my mind off the god-awful pain. The ambulance finally arrives. For this next part, just keep in mind that I have those boots on, not wearing a helmet, and I landed in the grass next to where I fell. So, they come over, and they keep asking me questions while I'm in agony. Every single question, asked by 4 paramedics, were along the lines of, "Were you wearing a helmet? Did you hit your head? Are you taking any medication?" I answered all the questions multiple times. Now comes the fun part, getting my boot off my now broken foot that is dangling because of the broken leg. So, after a few minutes of screaming, they finally get it off. They put me into a gurney. In the ambulance, I'm pleading with the paramedics to give me morphine. Fortunately, he did. Now the pain is still great, but bearable, in my barely conscious state. We arrive at the hospital, and soon enough they they give me a high amount of fentanyl. Now, if you know about high-powered opiates, they can go south quick. So, let's fast forward about a day later of constant high-grade pain medication. Keep in mind that the x-ray showed that my leg was shattered because my insurance would not cover any surgery until the cheap way was ruled out. Now, here's the part where I nearly died because of the crappy insurance plan. They must sedate me for this procedure, which was not an operation. So this was done in my hospital bed. They administer extremely high, mind-numbing amounts of fentanyl, and I'm out like a light. Problem is, they gave me a little too much of that mind-numbing speed demon. Soon enough, I'm having extreme seizures, with a crash cart waiting outside my room. If you don't know what that is, basically, it's a cart that has everything you need to revive someone if they suddenly die. I started waking up to my mother crying. I didn't know what was going on, and someone hurting my foot. So I'm cursing at the nurses and doctors in the room, while my family is crying. My mom is starting to go crazy on the doctor that administered the procedure for giving me way too much of that drug. But fortunately, all I needed was basic recovery after that. Just my luck. All because I tried to learn how to skateboard. This happened a few years ago. I was living in Zimbabwe at the time. I was having a pretty bad day, and I was going to go see my auntie, who lived about 400 kilometers away from me. If you're African, you'll understand that this was no small journey. So, I got in my car and set off. And about 3 hours into the journey, I came across a dude by the side of the road, who said he was going in the same direction. So, out of the goodness of my heart, I said jump in. We go to talking, and he happened to be going to the exact same village as me. He knew my auntie. Half an hour passes, and we're making polite chit-chat and reminiscing about old times in Zimbabwe, when all of a sudden, he tells me to pull over. So I do. He runs out of the car and starts making retching noises, so I assume he's throwing up. It's dark at this point, so I can't really see much. I go out to check on him. First mistake. I get out, and I go to his side, expecting him to be there. He's not. Then I hear someone behind me, and before I knew it, I'm unconscious. So, I wake up a couple of hours later. I know this because the sun was coming up at this point, without my car, clothes, or wallet. So, I'm thinking, great. I look around, and I see I'm on some farmland, having only this guy's clothing to wear. So, I start walking, in no particular direction, and eventually come across a settlement. I explain my situation to them, and they tell me that the nearest main road was at least a good half a day's walk from where they are, and that they don't get many cars coming through this part. But they heard one last night, which might have been mine. I started walking in that direction, and after what felt like forever, I came across a road. So I pitch up and start waiting. Now, I know most of you are thinking, why didn't you call someone? I had no phone with me, and I don't have the best memory, so I didn't know any numbers that would come in handy. After a couple of hours, a car stops and lets me hitch a ride with him. I let him know my situation, and he says he's going in the complete opposite direction of my intended destination. But he was willing to drop me off close enough for me to be able to walk the rest of the way there, which I thought, great. It takes a good 2 days to get there. He drops me off and I say my goodbyes, and I take down his number so I can repay him later. At this point, I'm starting to recognize my surroundings. I walk for a few miles, and as I'm getting closer to my auntie's, I hear a lot of singing and what appears to be a large crowd, which I thought, oh, this is strange. I'm about 100 feet from the house, and I see my son, which again, I thought was strange, because he was meant to be at school at this time. But instead of running to me and hugging me, as he normally does, he runs away screaming, to my complete bewilderment. I get to the gate, and suddenly, the large crowd that was alerted to my son's screams had stopped singing and stood silent. My wife appears, and she starts to run towards me, hugging and kissing me like I've been gone for months. My auntie appears, and immediately faints when she sees me. I still have no clue what's going on, and I'm exhausted, so we rush to get my auntie inside. I see my picture on top of a large box that resembles a coffin sitting in the living room, So it turned out, the guy who robbed me and made off with my car, my wallet, and my clothes was in a car crash so bad they couldn't identify the body. And the only things they could use to identify him was my wallet. They assumed that it was me who died in the crash. Because there was no body, they could arrange a funeral pretty quickly. And that is what I stumbled upon. My son still has nightmares to this day. And my wife, she told me to never pick up hitchhikers ever again. If you enjoyed these stories, please leave a like and subscribe for more. All stories from Reddit and other external sites are linked in the description below. If you have any stories you'd like to share, you can send it to my email at funwithfailure@gmail.com. The link is in the description.